Well, I'm so glad to have you on. My guest today is an author, a life coach, a performer, daughter of George and Brenda Carlin. Kelly Carlin, thanks so much for sharing your time with me.
My pleasure, Micah.
I really do appreciate it. And I should say thanks for already sharing so much about your father. I just finished reading your book, A Carlin Home Companion. And by way of introduction, in case any of my listeners have been living under a rock for the last 100 years, your father, of course, known to the world as George Carlin, one of the most famous comedians of all time. I think it'd be difficult to overstate his impact and his influence on the world, on me personally, on many millions of people. But I had not really even known anything about your mother, Brenda Carlin, before reading this. So it was very nice to have an insight into the rest of the members of the Carlin household. And
Yeah.
and I understand this was a play that you performed for a while before you turned it into a book.
Yep.
But and if you're willing to, I'd love to talk about both of your parents' deaths individually. But before we start that, a lot of this book is sort of and correct me if I'm wrong, is about being the only child of two people that were dealing with their own different addictions, and you trying to sort of having to grow up a little bit quicker than maybe other people. Just for way of introduction, can you tell me what it was like living with George and Brenda as parents?
Yeah. And I always preface this, and really the reason I did my solo show and ultimately the book too, which was a great, amazing, cool thing to have to get to do, is that I knew my story was not that extraordinary, even though I had this pretty extraordinary father and a pretty extraordinary mother too. But I knew our story was, in a lot of ways, an American story, very much an American story, especially those of us who were born in the 60s and were raised in the 60s and the 70s, but especially kind of adolescence 70s, high school 70s. This was an experience for a lot of us that we were raised by wolves, left to our own devices. And so, and the interesting thing about my parents too is they were of a generation which was, they were not the baby boomer generation. They were a little older than the people who experienced the 60s as the 60s, even though my parents experienced it that way too. But my dad was 30 in 1963. So, I mean, in 1967. So he was already, someone you couldn't trust.
Yeah, he was
you
kind of
know,
the square in the first
right.
part of his
Well,
career.
yeah. And age-wise, they always said, kind of one of the phrases back then was, don't trust anyone over 30, which now we think about that and we're like, wow.
Yeah.
But he really bridged those generations. So my parents weren't typical baby boomers. They were actually members of what they call the silent generation. But they participated in the counterculture big time because essentially that's who they were also. And with that came a lot of drinking. My mother was an alcoholic, and probably was the day my dad met her in 1960 in Dayton, Ohio. She was quite the party girl, from what I understand. And then my dad had been smoking weed since he was 13 or 14, Upper West Side in New York, because he basically grew up in Harlem. I used to call it Irish Harlem. And so they were both already self-medicating, as they say these days.
Sure.
And so, but, and things were a little crazy and chaotic with my mom's alcoholism, but then things got really insane when my dad broke through as a counterculture comedian and really changed his style and his approach to his work, because that's really when like cocaine came into the thing, and that's really when it got super crazy and hard to be around and hard to be an only child of and hard to mitigate their arguments. And because it's cocaine is like jet fuel, it's just such an evil fucking drug. As I think my dad and other people have talked about it, like marijuana brings people together. Everyone wants to pass the joint, Whereas cocaine, the minute you get it, you don't want to share it with anybody.
Yeah.
So it says a lot about that drug. So it was intense to be an only child in that situation and be an empath and to be a smart kid and know what's going on, and then everyone pretending like it isn't. And part of the reason I wanted to write the book was so many kids I know came home from school and didn't know what they were going to find, what mood their parents were going to be in, what state their parents were going to be in. And I think, the other thing too is the irony of our life, and my dad's life in a lot of ways, was here he was, the guy who was known as the one who spoke truth to power on stage. And yet, when your family is entangled with addiction and codependence, no one's willing to speak truth to anything in the room. And so I really grew up with that dichotomy, which can make you a little crazy.
Really? It sounds like the most stable household I could imagine.
It was fine. It was great. As and that was our rule too. Is everything okay? Oh yeah, no, everything's fine. It's great.
Yeah.
It's good.
So what I get from the book, you kind of felt you found a way to communicate with your father much later in life. It sounds like perhaps your connection grew maybe in your 30s.
Yeah, it actually, after my mom's death was a turning point for us, for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Could you tell me, I mean, the whole world knows or feels like they know your father's sense of humor. Could you tell me about Brenda's sense of humor? What made her laugh?
Oh God. Well, first of all, she was an easy laugh and had a great laugh. Like in an audience, you knew my mom's laugh. She was one of those laughers. And obviously every entertainer and comedian needs someone who will laugh at their jokes. And so I know, guessing that was part of their bonding for sure. My mom was also kind of silly and goofy. And she wasn't the one necessarily to crack jokes, but she had a great sense of humor. Her humor came out in other ways. And she really learned, especially through her sobriety, to learn to laugh at herself. And I think that is one of the signs of someone really doing their work on themselves, when they can learn to laugh at themselves, because it means they can kind of walk their ego out of the room and really not take themselves so seriously. So she had a really sharp eye for comedy. She ended up becoming a producer on HBO's Young Comedians special. So there used to be these in the late 70s and early 80s, probably early 80s, these young comedian specials where she would go out as a talent scout around town in Vegas and other places and look for new talent. And she helped a lot of like P.B. Herman and Howie Mandel and a bunch of these guys kind of come up through that stuff. So she had a keen ear for that stuff.
That's awesome. That's fascinating to hear about that. So it seems like there was a market point in her life when you were a teenager. She got sober, and then that was probably a different mother, huh? Sort of.
Yeah, with the thing about my mom, she was a real Jekyll and Hyde when she was drunk, or getting to a certain point in inebriation, whatever it was. And like I said, the cocaine didn't help that at all. So she was kind of two people all the time. When she was sober, she was warm and funny and adventurous and inclusive, and interested in the world. And when she was at a certain point of intoxication, she was bitter and angry and felt resentful and felt attacked and was always defensive and was really, really hard to be around. And with the cocaine coming into our life, she started, basically, she was a couple of times went to hospitals, and they would say to me, oh, she's got a pinched nerve, or she's dealing with some nutritional issues. And she was just binging a lot of coke and a lot of
Just
stuff.
a nice 70s euphemism for you almost died.
Yeah, so we're going to put you in the hospital for 5 days,
Sure.
and like get your electrolytes back up or whatever the fuck.
Must be exhaustion.
Yeah, exactly. Like whatever they were calling it. I was kind of clueless, even though I knew what was going on. And then it got to the point where she was really not eating anymore and could not even walk. She had the shakes so bad. And, the doctors were telling her she had to go into rehab and to save her life. And she did. My dad and I finally convinced her to go, and she really thought she was going to die there. She didn't think she would make it through. And they weren't sure either at that time. They didn't really have rehab centers. This was the very, very beginning of that. It was part of the mental institution at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica.
This is when they were phasing out lobotomies and starting the newer
probably,
sciences.
Hopefully. Yes, exactly. And so it was called the Chemical Dependency Center. It was like a few beds inside of this mental health wing. And they did have the beginning of a program, and she just took to it. I mean, it saved her life. It saved her sanity, obviously. And after she got through the hardest days of, shaking and not being able to function and getting to eat again and all of that, and kind of the health part of it being over, she came alive, and it was amazing to have her back. And it was also weird because I was then 12 years old, and she'd kind of been really MIA for me for, easily since I was 4 or 5 when the heavy drinking started, but really the last 5 years for sure, since I was like 7 or 8. And then I'm like an adolescent girl. And adolescent girls really don't want to have anything to do with their moms anyway. Cool. It was an awkward time to get your mom back. And I really wasn't having any of it. I had a lot of, we had a lot of stuff to work through still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would you mind telling me about her death? I understand it happened pretty quickly from what I read.
Yeah, it was...
or is that jumping ahead? Would you like to?
No, that's fine. Yeah, so her death was, for me, as it is, I think, for most people, the death of a parent is a life-changing experience.
For me.
Yeah, I mean, it's all sorts of things. It's everything. So she had when she got sober, she'd had a bunch of health issues after that, and they didn't quite know what it was. And one of them was she had something called non-A, non-B hepatitis. They now call it Hep C. She'd used a dirty needle with somebody, a neighbor. The only time she ever fucking shot drugs, of course.
Wow.
And she also had fibromyalgia. So she had a horrible autoimmune thing going on and this Hep C with the liver. They didn't know what fibromyalgia was back then. This was the mid-70s. They kept patting her on the head and telling her it was all in her mind. This is what they do a lot with women who have health issues. And and she had horrible joint pain, horrible fatigue, and then the Hep C stuff. And then they were giving them they were putting her on prednisone for the Hep C and stuff. And that made her crazy and gained 50 pounds. And so she had these chronic diseases. And then in her early 40s, like her mother at 50, her mother got breast cancer. And, in Dayton, Ohio in 1962, 63, when you got breast cancer, it was all over your body. It was metastasized. They weren't doing mammograms on women and shit like that. But my mom got it. They caught it pretty early. They did the full surgery. They did a radical mastectomy on her and stuff. She didn't have any chemo. She didn't have any radiation because she knew her liver couldn't take it. She knew she had killed her liver already.
Of course.
So she had the breast cancer, but she didn't do anything. And they took it all out and everything. So she always had these kind of issues, body issues and health issues and chronic issues. And so she was having just another chronic kind of a thing going on, and they didn't know what it was. And I think she kind of knew. I think when people get, cancer, they kind of like, my mom was very intuitive. I think she knew that some other shoe had dropped on some level, and I think it terrified her, and she didn't probably go as fast as she could have to the doctor. So by the time, so she had gallbladder symptoms, gallstone symptoms, basically what was going on. She had some like severe symptoms. And so they put her in the hospital, and they did a CAT scan to see where the gallstones were. And they were going to do whatever they do with gallstones, have surgery, I guess it is, or they remove your gallbladder or whatever it is. And they went in there and they did the CAT scan or the MRI or whatever it was. And she had 6 tumors on her liver.
Wow.
And one of them was the size of a quarter. And basically the doctors were like, this is not good. They said it was not metastasized breast cancer. So this was from the Hep C, which is without untreated, Hep C untreated will lead to liver cancer. And they said, well, we're going to put you on chemo to give you 6 months, because at that point we were looking at 2 months. Like they said, and the doctor told me after my mom died, just want to say that it was the most aggressive liver cancer he'd ever seen in the 20 years he'd been doing it or whatever. Like, it was so aggressive. It was growing underneath the microscope aggressive.
Let me ask you, would you have preferred to have that information before she passed?
I think she would have.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think she would have. I felt like the doctors really played us. Yeah. So
I've heard that a lot in the past from people I've interviewed. It's much preferred if you give it to people straight. Like,
yeah,
don't sugarcoat it whatsoever. We can deal with this, but what I can't deal with is not knowing.
Yeah, and we couldn't deal with it, but we would have. Right. It was like, because the way we ended up dealing with it was the way we dealt with everything before, which was nobody can talk about anything.
Sure. The old Irish way.
Yes, completely. And so they did tell us it was aggressive. They did say, well, we're thinking 2 to 3 months, I think they said to us, but we want to give her chemo to give her 6, is what they said. And my mother knew from before that her body couldn't take chemo. She knew that, that's why she didn't do it before, but she's like, give it to me. Like, we're taking the chemo. And then, this was around the exact time my dad was turning 60. And so we had a big 60th birthday party planned for him. His birthday's May 12th. So this was the end of March when we got this news. And so the first thing we said was, well, we're going to delay the party till mom's feeling better. That was the first untruth we told ourselves. Sure. Mom's going to be feeling better soon. Yeah. We'll be able to have a big party.
A year, and then we'll really celebrate.
Yeah, that chemo is not going to do a number on her. No, she'll be fine.
The illusions that we tell ourselves in the light of mortality are amazing.
100%. And then my dad also had his very first book coming out. And of course, it was a big deal. He'd gotten a huge advance. He was a big deal. George Carlin was writing a book. It was called Brain Droppings.
Sure.
Ended up being a huge thing. And he had dates, he had concert dates he was always doing also, because if people watched the documentary or read my book or read my dad's autobiography, that we had money issues all the time. So he needed to be on the road all the time. And of course he wanted to promote the book hugely, as he was going to be on every show in America to do that. And, so he had a couple of these gigs and he had some of that. And so he was kind of going in and out a little bit, and it was okay. And then mom started chemo, and it was intense and hard for her. And she was in a lot of pain in general. And so right away, they kind of set us up with an oncology nurse to come to the house and have a morphine drip from my mom, that she could have a certain amount of morphine all day to help with the pain. And my dad said that, you know what, I'm going to go on the road. I've got these few gigs to do. It was about 4 weeks into mom's cancer, and we were all kind of like had day nurses, and we're, and he was there when he was there with her and she did one chemo round with him and she did much better when he was there. And then he's like, I can't cancel these dates. And I have this book thing. And I called our family doctor this man was amazing. And my mom had trusted him. He was the only one who believed her about the hep C and the fibromyalgia years ago and all of that. And I called him and I said, my dad wants to go out of town. And the oncologist nurse who came to us to set up all the machines and would come maybe every other day just to make sure all the oncology stuff was going okay and her needs were being met. She worked with the main surgeon guy. She said to me, I told her my dad was going out of town. And she said to me, and his birthday was in a week. And she says, well, she's not going to make it to his birthday. And this is the thing about nurses. Believe nurses.
They give it to you straight.
And they're the only ones who really know what's going on. That's what their job is. Their job is to track a patient and know a patient's needs. And they've seen it all. And when they brought the morphine machine in, the nurse took me aside. She goes, I'm going to teach you how to override the machine so your mother can have as much as she needs.
That's how much pain she was in, huh?
Yes.
Wow.
And that's how much, and that's like whatever it was going to ramp up to over the weekend that my dad was going out of town and my mom was. And so I knew what was going on. So the minute the oncology nurse tells me all of that, I call our family doctor and I'm like, this is what she's telling me. He cannot go out of town. He needs to be here. And our family doctor said to me, she's going to be okay. She's going to be fine. She's not there yet for sure. He can go out of town or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. And I'm begging my dad, like, I really don't think you should go out of town. Oh no. Well, the doctors say she's fine. She's stable. And so he went out of town. And it was a Saturday. And she'd had her second round of chemo on Friday. Her body was not doing well with the chemo, as most people, and chemo back then, that was almost 25 plus years ago. It's a little, they've kind of dialed it in a little differently. It's a little, God knows what they were giving her. So she lost her ability to like stand up and walk, and like we'd walked her to the bathroom and her legs went buck. I mean, it was horrific, terrifying, scary for her. She was not doing well. They ended up wanting to put a catheter in so she didn't have to get up to go to the bathroom, blah, 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 blah. Turns out, so the next day was Mother's Day. And my mom woke up and she wasn't quite really, it was like she was 4 years old. Like, it's like she was this version of herself that was not quite really verbal, couldn't talk a lot. She also was diabetic. So we had to monitor her blood sugar. So it was just this complicated thing. Plus we had this weekend nurse that, the weekend nurse was there, didn't really know us. It was someone from an agency and we're like looking at my mom's blood sugar and she'd already had her diabetic. She'd had her insulin and Mom, you got to drink some orange juice. Like you've got to get some sugar in you because this is not going to go well today. And she refused. She couldn't drink. I mean, literally she couldn't drink. She was miserable. She couldn't speak. She was like a little kid. She was shaking her head and closing her mouth. And I just said to her, Mom, if you don't drink this orange juice, I'm going to have to call the paramedics. And that was the last thing I said to my mom because she started going into some sort of episode and we called the paramedics and we had to take her to the hospital. And when we got to the hospital, she was crashing. And my husband was there with me and our best friend Teresa was there. My dad was out of town and I just called my dad and said, he was in New York, and said, you have to get on the first plane and get here right now. She's being kept alive by machines. I mean, I told the doctors in the emergency room, I said, you have to keep her alive. My parents have been separate for so many big events of their life. And they can't be for this. Like my dad has to be here for her. He cannot not be here for this. And they did. They fucking kept her alive on 25,000 fucking machines. And my dad, Bob and I got in the limo and went to LAX to pick him up. And that was surreal. Like and this is back in the day when you could actually go to the gates. And we went to the gates and there were all these paparazzi there. And we're thinking, what the fuck? What the fuck? Diana Ross was on the flight. Thank God. It was like, oh, okay, it's just Diana Ross. Yeah. All right, good. Sure. They don't even give a shit about George Carlin. Perfect.
Hey, nice. George who?
But yeah, exactly. But we were in the limo and we're driving up to the hospital and, you know, it's just weird because, I mean, none of us talked about the death or her dying. Like my mom and I had one conversation about it the 2 days before she died. We were in the car and she just said to me something like, I'm really pissed. I had so much more to do. I really don't want to die. And I just was crying, driving, no, I don't want you to die either. Like that was all we could muster as a conversation as a family. And she did. We ended up turning off the fucking machines and, you know, takes as long as it takes. Yeah, but the interesting thing about it for me was I'd always felt that I was so terrified of death. Watching my parents kind of always on the edge and putting out so many fucking chemicals into their bodies. You know, as a kid, you're just terrified that your parents, what's wrong with them? What are they doing? Why are they acting that way? And my parents would fight a lot. And I had so much anxiety around that stuff. And so I was terrified. My dad had heart attacks and had heart disease and always afraid we were going to get the phone call in the middle of the night that my dad had died or something. And had never seen this really coming, you know, with my mom, even though she was sick all the time and stuff. But we never ever talked about it. And I just always thought to myself, oh my God, when my mother dies, they're going to have to drug me. They're going to have to put me in a straitjacket in UCLA mental ward for I don't know how long, because I will not be able to deal with reality. And instead, what happened was, well, first of all, she visited me in the shower. That was one thing. I'll tell that story in a minute. But this incredible sense of peace came over me, as if I was the earth suddenly. It was the complete opposite of anything that I ever thought. And I knew exactly, I mean, it's very surreal, as you know, Micah, that thing that happens when you're close to someone who dies, there's this weird, surreal thing that happens where you're now living on a different planet.
Oh yeah, very much so.
And you're walking out there in the real world and you're going, wait, what's going on? What do you mean you're going to the supermarket and that person's going to Little League practice? And no. My mother has died. You must stop everything you're doing.
Right. What do you mean all flights aren't canceled worldwide? Don't you know that everything's falling apart?
Don't you know that the end of the world has happened and you people are just going about your fucking business?
Yeah.
It's insane. But there was this deep, incredible sense of love and peace and something about your heart cracking open so big that the only thing that there is room for is real emotion, whether that is disbelief or grief or love.
We're all at the same time.
Yes, it's the yes and moment of life. It's and all of the things are here at once.
All of my emotions are doing a little improv sketch.
100%. So yeah,
and start to finish, I mean, she had health problems, but that whole trajectory was 6 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 5.5 weeks.
That's insane. That's such a
it was as if she had been hit by a car. I mean, it's almost that fast because none of us were really talking about it. Sure. So we were all pretending that it was all going to be normal.
Of course. And I imagine the gravity doesn't really sink in until she's dead. And then oh wow, this wasn't like a dress rehearsal. This is the only one we get.
Well, yeah, Micah, that's the real fucking information you get at the end of that one is, oh, this shit's real.
Yeah. Oh, there's not going to be a take two.
There's not a take two. There's not a do-over. There's not an opening night. This was the show. We were in it already. Yeah. And that hits you in a way that it'll never hit you until you have that experience. You can say it till you're blue in the face to friends and other people who've not lived it. But when you've lived it, you know what that wake up call feels like.
Sure. And it's instantly, you're a different person. You're just like, oh, wow. I guess I didn't realize that the sun could like not come up one day. It's sort of what it's like.
Exactly.
And you're like, wait a minute, you guys can all see the sun? I don't see the sun. What happened?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm late for work.
Yeah. It is the biggest reality check there is.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
You write about how, you and your father, maybe like a year later, you went and spread her ashes. And then, there was a certain point where George just said, I have to be done with this. I'm done with the ashes. I'm done with the rituals.
Yeah. The grieving part.
How did that feel? And also, do you think that was real, or that was just him shoving it down into wherever people shove things?
Yeah, I think it was both for him. He was very much a compartmentalized man emotionally, as people clearly find out these days if they've seen the documentary or read my book. It's like, oh yeah, there's a human being down there.
Oh, right. And he's not just a legend. He has a heartbeat.
Right. And people like think they know him on stage. And then I say to them, he never talked about himself on stage. And people go, no, that's not true. Oh, wait a minute. You're right. Like people knew nothing about his real internal life or his real life at all. I mean, wife, daughter, had no idea he had one, right? Nobody knows.
I would consider myself a huge Carlin fan, and I hadn't even really considered you and your mother until kind of recently, unfortunately.
Yes.
And, in the book, there was a marked change at one point when he was on, I think, Leno or Letterman, and he acknowledged one of your latest achievements. I don't know what you have, an MFA and a master's, or a master's.
Yeah, I have a master's in counseling psychology. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is funny, because until you pointed that out, I'm like, man, George Carlin talks about everything except for what happens after he gets off stage.
Exactly. Whereas Richard Pryor,
oh yeah, just laid it all out.
Laid it, like it just unzipped himself on stage and just bled all over the place, guts and all. And you knew everything about Richard's demons. But my dad kept his demons aside. And, and losing a mother or a parent is very different than losing a spouse. And I know that my parents loved each other deeply. And I also know they had a lot of baggage. And some of that baggage just got kind of shoved in the attic. And my mother certainly didn't want to go rifing through it, even though my dad might have. And my dad, his personality was to kind of shove it all down anyway. So I knew that they loved each other, and they were soulmates for sure. But at the end, they were companions. They were companions, and there were pieces missing for both of them that they would have both absolutely admitted to. But they were together, and they were companions, and they'd been on a long road together. So when my mom died, and this new person came into my dad's life, Sally Wade, my dad was like, because when my dad met my mom, he was 23 years old. And so it was kind of like he was a teenager again with Sally, and it was kind of awkward and horrible for me. But he was done. And I had lost my mother, and I was processing everything, like processing not just her death. And I was 34 when she died, which is pretty young. She was 57 when she died, which is very young.
Very young, yeah.
And, being in your early 30s, and I had just come out of an insane decade in my own life in my 20s, being with an older man and doing a lot of drugs myself, and being very much confused about what I wanted and who I was and what I was capable of. I had a very rocky 20s. And I was just coming out of that. I'd been with my new husband We had just gotten married. And he's the Rock of Gibraltar. He's love of my life and all of that. So I was healing, but I was still very shaky. So I had a lot of healing to do. And really my mother's grief allowed me to do a lot of that healing, a lot of coming to terms with her, a lot of healing around that. And it was going to be a long process, and I wasn't going to rush it. Grief takes the fucking time it takes. That's one thing that people listening to this can get. It takes as long as it takes. And for each person, that's different. For my dad, he put a little timeline on it. In a year after her death, I'm going to date this woman, Sally. And then, after a few months after that, 18 months after that, then I'm going to be done with, this ritual with Kelly and grieving with my daughter. Whereas I was like, bring it on. I got shit to work out.
Sure. Amazing. Yeah. Can you tell me about, so he was raised by a single mother, and his mother lives, you probably had a relationship with her.
I did. She lived into her 80s.
How did he handle her loss, or did he ever discuss it?
It was one of the happiest days of his life.
Wow.
She was a piece of work. Yeah. She was a real piece of work. If you read Last Words, his
I have, but it's been about a decade.
He talks about her a lot. She was a narcissist. She was completely controlling over him and completely basked in his fame when it suited her. But they were like this constantly. Okay. But she shaped him. My dad did not have a dad. I mean, he had a dad, obviously, but he never knew his dad.
Yeah.
And his dad died when he was 5 or 6 years old, but he never met his dad. And his dad was a raging alcoholic. And raging, like really the word raging. And it really affected his older brother, Patrick, who did know his father.
It sounds like, his mother left with the two young boys at a very young age.
So. Yeah, my dad was a baby, was I think 9 months old, and Patrick was 5 years old at the time. Yeah, okay. Down the fire escape, like escaped basically the marriage. But yeah, so Mary was around, and but yeah, it was a relief when she died for my dad.
Happiest day of his life, huh?
Yeah, huge relief. Wow. Big relief. Honored her always and had great fondness for a lot of her, but she was a piece of work for sure.
Well, these people don't come from nowhere.
Truly.
Your father, it's interesting to speculate about the origin stories of George Carlin. So after your mother died, you wrote the story. While your father was still alive, you were performing this show, correct?
It was a version of it. It wasn't the same show I ended up doing after he died. It was called Driven to Distraction. It was based on some journal entries that I had written, and then I kind of made them more into the shape that I needed them to kind of hold the show. But so I interspersed stories from my past with these 5 weeks of watching my mother die, and all of the pretending we were doing, and kind of I was unpacking this, like, it was the same pattern we did. And I wasn't blaming my parents for it. It was like, it's the same pattern that I did when I was a kid. Our family, we just pretended nothing bad was happening. And we would say, hey, how you doing? We'd say, fine. And then when my mom got really sick, we just perpetuated that pattern. And so I just kind of talked about how, that kind of shaped me, and how my truth, my inability to speak my own truth came from being a codependent and a people pleaser in all of my relationships, family and with significant others too. And that that my mom's death woke me up to that, and that I was going to draw a line in the sand to speak my truth. And there I was on stage speaking my truth. And it made my dad very uncomfortable, because I brought up stuff about their cocaine use, and I brought up my mother's death, which, we did our best through. But he was not willing to process any of that anymore. And he hadn't. And he just said to me, look, I can't handle this. And I love you, and you can do this. Of course, you're an artist, and this is what you need to do. And but I can't be there. I can't be in the audience. And I think that's when, I don't think I realized it at the moment. I look back on it now, but I really see that it was like, I couldn't do it without him. It wasn't safe for me to breach that part of our relationship. Like I'd spent my whole life protecting my parents' bad behavior from the world, as kids do who have parents that do these things. And I'm not blaming anybody or anything like that. That's just what you do, because that's you're on the team. I'm on Team Carlin.
Yeah, Three Musketeers. You guys
I'm
called
one of the
yourselves?
three. I'm one of the Three Musketeers. Is what we do, and you don't even do it consciously. It's just what you do.
Sure.
And I was still on Team Carlin. Like, oh, like I can't make I never wanted my dad to suffer or feel emotional pain. Like that's what we were always doing. We were just always covering for each other's emotional pain. And yet when you do that for each other, what you're ultimately saying to each other is, I don't think you're strong enough to get through this. Or we're not strong enough to get through this together.
Interesting.
And so when you avoid that over and over again for decades, that creates a void inside of you where you really do think like, oh, I can't face the shadow. I can't face my demons. I can't face the hardest, most difficult emotions or the hard truths about the moment. Like we're not going to make it through this. Our love isn't strong enough to let us get through this. And, you know, I think my dad came from an avoiding family. My mom did too, you know, Ohio, Midwest. And then I did, you know, so it was kind of how we were all built. And so I ended up going to grad school and getting to like unpack all of my luggage, all of my baggage, you know, because they make you do it. If you're going to be a psychologist, they're like, you got to fucking unpack your shit.
Yeah.
And I got to really start to tell my stories in rooms where it wasn't entertainment or it wasn't storytelling, that it was an expression of my truth and an expression of my soul. And it gave me big permission and a lot of confidence to do that. And it actually healed me deeply because I could speak my truth and people went, oh my God, thank you for speaking your truth because my family does that too. Or I understand that pain, or we did it this way or whatever. And so we could talk about it then and unpack it, you know, and talk about origin stories and things like that. So, yeah.
It's fully within your right to tell this because as much as, I mean, it seems like a lot of your life must be influenced by the shadow that your father cast over you.
Oh, hugely, hugely. I'm actually writing another solo show right now, and it's all about shadow and ego.
As much as he is the legend, this is your story.
Yes.
He's your father, and that's actually part of his story too, you know?
Yep, absolutely. It's just a part of our stories, you know. I mean, it's like it's a circumstance I can't control. And because of it, it shaped me and it shaped my choices and it shaped my way of looking at the world. And of course, my parents shaped me, you know, enormously. And being an only child, you're very much shaped by your parents too.
Absolutely. And you don't have a sibling to lean on.
Do not. Yep. You got to figure it out on your own. And
you don't have a fellow co-conspirator to compare notes with about mom and dad.
Exactly. And say, are we insane or is it them?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You know, you're just always feeling insane, basically. Because it's like, well, they can't be insane because if they're insane, I'm really fucked.
Sure. And I need to break the generational curse.
Well, you know, and that's part of it too, you know, finally getting the courage to speak my truth. And I mean, even doing the couple of times I did my early solo show, but then after I got out of grad school, I started getting on stages and doing my stories. And because I'd gotten enough confidence and I'd learned enough about breaking generational trauma that it's important to speak your truth and to say it and always do it in a way, never from the victim place. You cannot be a storyteller from the victim place. No one wants to hear it. And it's, you know, and ultimately you don't want to live that life. Go do your therapy first and then come tell your story.
Yeah. You got to be in a good place before you share the trauma.
You have to own your part in it. You have to be willing to say, look, yes, A, B, and C, and I kept making that choice to never speak my truth, and that's really what writing my book about and doing my solo show was about. Was, yeah, we kind of set ourselves up this way in this family, but this is how we continued the dance, and this is what families do. They continue the dance, until they don't anymore. And unfortunately, it took my father's death for me to ultimately go on his stage with his audience to tell them our family's truth. And, that's what it took.
One of the lines I liked, because you discussed, your father was clear that he took offense, but he would not censor you as an artist in your story. That was a big thing. But one of the lines that I wrote it down, you said, I finally understood that disappointing and betraying my parents was inevitable and necessary if I was to ever grow up. And I think that's a hugely important lesson to learn. Our parents are fallible human beings, and they did what they did, but our story is our own story,
Absolutely. And it's that thing too of trusting that you can survive that whatever the relationship looks like on the other side of that is okay. That perpetuating the enmeshed, unhealthy relationship, which is what we had, isn't helping anybody, and is more exhausting than you think it is. But you're in it, so it's all you know. And so,
honestly, all that emotional storage space takes up some health space too. You know what I mean?
It sure does.
And I don't need to speculate too much, but if you got all that stuff going on, it's certainly going to affect your physical.
Absolutely. For sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk about your father. I mean, he had 3 heart attacks? His heart problems was sort of the theme throughout your whole life, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. He had 3 heart attacks and 5 angioplasties, and he never had open heart surgery. My mom kind of didn't want him to have it because she knew about the depression and the personality change that happens to a lot of people. And a lot of people talk about Robin Williams and really feel like that happened to him after his open heart surgery. He had an enormous depression, and I have friends who were really close with him and really saw that happen for him. And so, that was always kind of looming around. I was always waiting for the 3 a.m. call. And then, you're always waiting for it, and then it happens. And people say, were you surprised? And I say, were you shocked? Were you surprised? I'm like, when you get the phone call, I'm not shocked, but I was surprised it happened on that day, because you just never know, And so I was there for my mom's death, and but I was not there for my dad's, and I'm glad I wasn't. I don't think being there for both your parents' death, I don't think I would have been good for me.
No, one's enough.
One was enough. One's all you need. And it wasn't, these aren't like people who are 99 years old and you're patting their hand and going, good job. These are people taken too early. My dad was 71 when he died.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was in Hawaii. I was officiating a friend's wedding, another comedian, Craig Shoemaker. And I had, I was on the island of Maui, where there's a famous story in my memoir and in the documentary too. I end up talking about it there, about us being in a place during the druggy years, a place called Napili Kai, where my parents went after each other with knives. It was an insane moment, a horrible moment. And I finally showed my emotions to my parents, the pain and the suffering and the terror I was in. And it really impacted my dad. Actually, he spoke about that, years later, that really got him thinking we've got to fucking figure this shit out, because we are torturing this child. He knew it had an effect on me for years, but he knew it was okay, we need to figure this out quicker than it's going. And I had made my parents sign a peace treaty at the trip. And of course, 20 minutes later, they broke it because they completely
violated the clause.
There was cocaine involved. There's no,
right.
So I was in Maui for this wedding, and I had rented a car, and I ended up going up to the Napili Kai. I was like, oh my God, I've got to go up to the Napili Kai because I want to see, which version of me is still here. Like, I want to go to the place where the trauma happened, where the broken Carlins were, and just see, because I've done a lot of fucking work on myself, God damn it, up to that point. It had been about 11 years since my mom died, and I'd gone through, my training as a psychologist and all my own therapy and blah, 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 practicing Buddhist and all that. And I went there and had this like amazing experience of like love, and I could really feel that it was like it was over for us, and I was clear, and I didn't have any pain or resentment or any of that. And I get in the car and I'm driving back to the condo, and I call my dad, and my dad never picks up, and he picks up, and I tell him where I was and what I'd experienced, and we had this profound, real conversation, and just like raw emotion in the space. I could hear my dad was completely choked up on the other line, because I just said to him, Dad, it's done. I said, like all the pieces of ourselves that we left there, whatever part of our broken hearts and souls, I just gathered them back up for us. It's done, Dad. It's complete. It's over. We are a healed unit. The Carlins are okay. And it was just this profound conversation. It was one of those conversations where, because my dad and I had so much, we took care of each other so much emotionally, it was just like the most truthful, authentic conversation we'd ever had. It was just so powerful. Such an incredible space between us. And then I did the wedding. And then the next day after the wedding, I had like a massage or something, and turned off my phone for hours, because I'd like slept and massaged and swam in the ocean. And the whole time my phone was off, my poor husband and my best friend were at the emergency room with my father. He was told by the doctor 3 days earlier to go to the hospital to have some tests. His heart failure was acting up. He had had heart failure for 2 years, and he should have gone in on Friday, and he didn't. And it became an emergency, and he died. He died there at St. John's, and he died in the very same room, in the emergency room that my mother died in.
Oh, wow. And in the book, I believe your verbal response, you had the same words. You said, "No, not today."
Yeah. Yeah. It is just that thing where it's like, it is that thing. It's like, well, of course I've been expecting this, and what, and
totally.
so, and it was, and, the surrealness of my mother's death was what it was, but the surrealness of my father's death was fucking insane.
But yeah, tell me about that, because you address it in the book, but what is it like to be grieving George Carlin, the father, while the entire world is grieving George Carlin, the legend that we all know personally through his comedy?
It's like, literally, it hit me right away. I mean, I go to the airport, and I'm like the most privileged person on earth. I go up to the guy to check in, and I'm like, just like, first of all, like, my parent just died. Do you have like a grieving rate or something? Like the death or I don't know what it was. And he's like, whatever that was. And I'm like, fuck it, just put it on the credit card. Give me a first class ticket. I can't sit in economy in this shape. And then, or maybe like at first I asked him like, well, could you bump me up? I'm like, my dad's George Carlin. George Carlin. And the guy looks at me, has no idea who my dad is.
I know. I laughed so hard when I read that.
He's like looking at me like,
I underlined that. That's so funny. You're like,
he's like a Hawaiian guy. He's like, yeah, I don't know who he is. Nope. And I'm like, of course, I get the only person on earth who does not know who my dad is. So immediately it's like, and I'm being such a privileged little fuckhead right now by even asking this. It's so like, horrible.
Well, if I were anyone else on earth, I probably would, but I don't really pay attention to pop culture. I'm more of a literature guy.
Exactly. Just totally. And then of course I'm in the airport.
Avoiding televisions.
Avoiding televisions because I do not want to see him on the scroll. Because it's not real. It's not real yet. I've not seen my dead father. I know I've been told he's dead. I know I'm getting on an airplane and all of that. But it's like, for some reason, if Entertainment Tonight says it's real, It's real.
That's the nail in the coffin right there.
That's it.
I suspended all disbelief until
So,
TMZ
yeah. So,
reported.
and thank God it's 2008. So there's no smartphones at this point. So thank God I don't have a smartphone. So I'm not scrolling on anything. I'm just like avoiding TVs. And then I'm like, all right, fine, I'll go look. And I guess I find one of those old fashioned, they used to have them in airports where you could go and sit in a chair and put money into a machine and get on the internet for 10 minutes.
Sure, a little Wi-Fi cafe.
Yeah, I did it. I Googled it. I'm like, all right, he's dead, or whatever I did with it. Whatever the search engine was in 2008, I did that. I'm like, okay, yeah, look at that. He's on the internet. It's real. Yeah, so it was very surreal. And it still is. But immediately
start pouring in,
well,
right?
yeah. Well, then, yeah, I kind of collapse at home. And then the next morning, it was around 10 a.m., sleeping in. I think I took, drugs to go to sleep. I don't know how I got to sleep. I don't even know. It's just the worst feeling, as you know, Micah, going to sleep on those days, because when you wake up, you're going to remember again what happened. And it's like the trauma happens all over again.
Very much so.
And
yeah.
It's such a weird thing. So you're afraid to go to sleep because you don't want to wake up to have the trauma. You'd rather just be in the trauma of it instead of like that fucking moment where you're like, oh, I'm waking up. Oh, fuck.
Right.
So
like, you're like, wait, where am I? Let me get my bearings. Oh,
and then you're like, oh,
fuck.
My dad just fucking, and then that pain in your chest comes. And so like 10 a.m., the phone rings and I can hear my husband. Hello. Yeah. Yes. She's not available right now. Like, oh, I wonder who's calling.
He's screaming on your behalf.
Always, very much so. Knew it was going to need it to happen, and comes and he's like, I'll let her know. She'll call you back or something like that. And he comes to the door in the bedroom. I'm like, so who was that? That was Larry King. I'm like, Larry King? Like, Larry King just called me?
Right.
Yeah. Larry King wants to know if you want to be on they're having a show tonight about your dad. He would love for you to come into the studio to be on the panel. And I like sit up in bed and I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Well, I guess. And Bob's like, Kel, you don't have to do that.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, really? I don't have to do that? Like, it's not an obligation. Like, it's not part of my daughter of famous person contract. Because it kind of feels like that. It's like, no, Kel. And then it like hits me like where I'm at emotionally. Like I come back to my body and I'm like, yeah, probably not ready to do that. Like, never really been on television. Can't imagine putting 3 sentences together right now. It's like, okay, well, maybe I can so they end up calling in. My uncle and I both ended up calling in, and Roseanne and Gary Shandling, and I think Lewis Black was on.
Oh, nice.
And Lewis was like in tears. It was just so sweet. And then the other phone calls started coming. Well, I think Gary ended up calling me right away.
Sure.
I just have to explain to people, I did not know comedians. We did not hang out with comedians. My dad was an introvert. My dad was on the road by himself. Comedians are on the road by themselves and don't do comedy clubs, don't hang out with comedians for the most part. And my dad just wasn't a social guy. He was a total writer, introvert kind of a guy. To get my dad to do anything social was torture for him. Although he always enjoyed it when he was there. But I didn't know comedians. We didn't hang out with comedians. And then comedians started calling me. And every single one of them were amazing. And immediately said to me, I'm here for you. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. You are family. And that was Lewis who said that to me. Richard Belzer said that to me. Gary Shandling and I spent an hour on the phone together. He ended up becoming my mentor and a dear, dear friend of mine, mentored me and helped me, gave me notes all along with my solo show. And
your father's death really opened up just the doors to this new tribe of
100%. I became part of the comedy tribe. I became friends with Paul Provenza, who opened me up to even the bigger other parts of the comedy world. Paul became my director for my solo show. Yes, it was. So I had these 2 tribes that immediately opened up for me. One were the comedians, and that world, and all the club owners and everyone was just so generous and so lovely with me. And then the other tribe that happened was my dad's fans, because 2008 was the year Facebook came and Twitter came. And suddenly I was on Facebook and social media and being immersed in my dad's fans. And they really, really kept me afloat that first year. I could not have done it without them. They were my web of love and light, both the comedians and the fans. And I didn't have to, I could be in my grief sparingly and do that. And then I could go and really be distracted by talking about him with them, or getting to hang out with these amazing other comedic minds and geniuses and hearts, big-hearted men too, and women too, but a lot of guys. And they kept me alive.
That's incredible. I'm glad that the outpouring of both comedians and fans. Your father was such an influential. I mean, you and I are probably a generation apart. I don't know where generations fall, but I discovered him at 14. It was hugely influential. I think Complaints and Grievances was the first one. And then when I saw, Life is Not Worth Losing, I just fell in love with him. And then I dug through Class Clown, all that older stuff.
Yep.
And I think it's a testament to his legacy that, it's passed down through generations. At one point in the book, you're talking about you were at university and one of your professors put on a video of your father. Funnily enough.
Oh, no, it was a cassette tape, Micah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. I
was
forgot.
back
We are
in the
truly
day
different generations. My bad.
Cassette tape.
It might have been an 8-track if we're going to be specific.
It was 1985. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I said all that to say that tradition still carries on. When I was part of my brief academia at this community college in northern Minnesota in 2008, 2009, my interpersonal communications professor, he goes, today we're going to watch a video. And it was your father speaking to Congress. And it was hilarious. And
it was no, it wasn't to Congress. It was
was it the correspondence dinner? No,
it was the National Press Club.
Okay, there we go.
Yep, yeah, and he talked about political
Congress
correctness.
Would not have been laughing as much as they were laughing. Sorry.
No, he would have been testifying in front of, but he didn't testify in front of Congress.
Yeah, he was in Congress for different things.
It was the National Press Club, and he talked about political correctness and stuff like that. Yeah.
There it is.
Yep.
Yeah. So, obviously his stuff is timeless.
Yep.
It was nice to, I just finished the chapters. You sort of did a real nice eulogy. You told about the 7 out of 7,000 things your father shared with you. But it seemed like the ones that really resonated with me was his music choice and his belief that everybody should be treated, equally.
Yep.
And, I mean, that's a huge part of, well, not the music, but I was just so drawn to his message. He was such a unique voice and, such a genius. So I'm glad that it's really nice to see like a different layer of the person, because he was a person. He wasn't only a legend. He was a human being.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I'm writing about these days is the way our brains kind of treat people in the spotlight, how we forget their humanity because we kind of make them into gods.
Sure.
And we kind of remove their humanity from them, or just the nature of being in the spotlight especially in American culture. It's different in Europe, but there is this thing our mind just does to people as we, unless they remind us constantly of their humanity. And that's why people are always so shocked when celebrities have scandals. It's like, it's like that People magazine piece.
They're just like us.
They're just like us. They pick up the dry cleaning.
It's like Matthew McConaughey eating an apple. You're like, wow.
He's eating a piece of
just like
fruit.
Me. I had no idea.
He chews food.
He has someone else put on his pants one leg at a time.
But it is this interesting thing. And it is interesting. And what I'm writing about and what I want to talk about in the piece is about how stepping into my dad's light for me, what that felt like and what that did to me and what I was searching for in it, because I'd always been in the shadow. And so the light became this thing of like, ooh, what's over there?
Right.
And so from kind of like a mythological, archetypal, psychological point of view about what's it like to visit the light and to find our own light, because each of us are in the shadow about from someone or something.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've done a lot of personal growth in the last 20 or 30 years, and it's inspiring. It's nice to read about this stuff. I can't imagine what it would have been like growing up in the environment that you grew up in.
It was just my life. It really is.
Well,
Like
of
that's
course,
the
nobody
thing.
chooses who
It's
they.
and it's not even that. It's just it's your normal. Whatever your normal was, Micah. I'm like, I don't know what that normal was like. I just know what my normal was like. So
Of
it's
course,
just your normal. So yeah, that's the weird thing about it is it's just life. We're just all dealing with their circumstances.
very much so. Um, and it seems like you took a little bit more spiritual path than your father. He said that you're the shaman of the family.
Yeah, but my dad really gave me my spirituality. I mean, he was the one who was a seeker and he loved the mystery of the universe and he always loved coincidences and synchronicities. And he really taught me to pay attention to that and to question everything. And so he was a huge seeker, you know, and
Yeah,
so he really gave me that, even though um, I mean, and I never went to a real church or anything, so I never had to recover from any kind of religious trauma
sure. Yeah.
like he did or others.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to say that he was not, we all consider like, he had some very pronounced opinions on that, but he was
Yeah.
very much you said he made you seek new questions and think about things differently. For me, very much so. It was hugely influential when I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I truly hadn't thought about institutions in this way, even just in general, when he's talking about America and who owns America. It's a big club. You're not in it. I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, someone is being paid to say this in front of thousands of people, and he's making it so funny and accessible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I certainly don't think he was very deep and philosophical and
Very, very much
seeking,
so. Yeah.
seeking
Questioning
answers.
everything.
Yeah, looking
Yep.
at things from different angles.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I mean, rest in peace to both George and Brenda.
Yeah,
Sounds like
absolutely.
they were wonderful people. So what are your next plans with this thing you're writing?
I'm just starting to work on it. It's just becoming real to me. It's going to be a performance piece of some kind. I just know that I want it to be a theater piece. I know what I want to write about. I want to write about my life since my dad's death, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't want it to necessarily be. It's what stopped me and stumped me about it is that I've done a lot of work the last 5, 6 years in stepping out, like trying to I really owned being his daughter for a while in order to tell my story and also, to get access to tell my story. I mean, it's the reality of it. I get how the fucking entertainment industry works.
I
Um,
mean, Lewis Black didn't call me when my dad died. I'll tell you that much.
right, exactly. But I tried to do it with a lot of care and a lot of trust. But I also have a story to tell about what it's like to go from the shadow to the light, and I want to make it as universal as possible. Where even though once again my circumstances are a little extraordinary, but I'm trying to find the human story inside of it, the universal story inside of it. So I'm working on that. But I also work a lot of my day and a lot of my mind is focused on my personal coaching work, and I have a beautiful program called Humans on the Verge where I help people find the courage to live a more authentic next chapter in their life. I work with mostly people over 40 who've kind of lived a bit of life and are at that questioning of like, is this all there is kind of a question. And people have a lot of different turning points in their life. Sometimes they're empty nesters. Sometimes it's a health scare. Sometimes someone dies in their life. Lots, retirement, all sorts of things. And I love doing that work because I really feel like that's the work that's how I got onto stage. I mean, I had to have courage to speak my authentic story on a public stage. And I feel like I've taken a lot of what I've learned about how to do that and poured it into a coaching program. And I've figured out kind of the 3 or 4 things that people really need in order to move through that. And I've been a certified life coach since 2006. And, so I've been doing this work a while, but, so I've been doing that for the last 5 years, mostly building this coaching program and teaching through this and coaching through this. And so now I'm returning back to my creative work this year, and I'm excited about it.
Well, that's cool. Sounds like you really found a way to use your gifts to help other people. I really appreciate you, sharing all this stuff. It's, it's hugely insightful. It's nice to know your story as well as George's story.
Thank you, Micah. I appreciate that.
No, I really appreciate your time, Kelly. I don't know if I want to take up too much more of your time.
I've actually got an appointment in about 10 minutes.
All right. Well, let's have a nice little touchdown. Is there anything? Bring the plane down onto the runway. Real smooth. Where can people follow you? I mean, sorry, it seems disingenuous to do plugs, but that is the formula of podcasts.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, that's how you reach people these days. I'm still on Twitter. At Kelly.
Thank you for calling it Twitter.
I do.
Us true loyalists are never going to acknowledge the new rebrand.
Nope, just waiting for him to go away. Yeah. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but that's my hope. And things will never go back to the same. But yes, I'm Kelly_Carlin over there. And then I am on Instagram as Kelly Carlin is here because someone had Kelly Carlin. Bastards.
Oh, man.
I'm on Blue Sky as Kelly Carlin, no underscore. And you can find out about my coaching program at humansontheverge.com. My Kelly Carlin website is a mess. Don't even bother.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we got enough avenues to find you and your output. And of course, the book, by all means, pick it up. I have it right
now. Yes, please. Carlin
Home Companion.
Yes.
I can't recommend it highly enough. And it's very funny, but it's also very poignant. Obviously, it's not.
Yeah, and watch the documentary. Everybody, it's on HBO Max. It's called George Carlin's American Dream. I'm very proud of it. I'm an executive producer on it. We won an Emmy for it. I got to do the Emmy speech. It was very exciting.
Congrats.
It's an amazing thing. Amazing day. One of the most amazing days of my life. Very, very proud that we won the Emmy. And
I'm sure your parents would be proud of that too. That's fantastic.
I know they would. And I also know that, Judd really leaned into my story and into the book to tell my mother's and our family's story.
Yeah, that's great.
So that was a real honor when I realized, because I had nothing to do with it editorially. I gave it all to Judd and his team, Michael Bonfiglio, the other director, and they ran with it. And I was really, really touched how much they had leaned into all the work I had done on myself and to tell my family's story. And so it was just a real honor to know that the world saw the heart and soul of the Carlins.
Yeah, that's really fantastic that even, in death, there's people still learning about George Carlin,
Yeah.
There's teenagers he's probably going to be trending on TikTok next week for some reason. 7 dirty words is going to be discovered by the Zoomers.
Truly, that would be great.
But yeah, I mean, his legacy is eternal. And yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing your energy and your story. And I think that's about it. I appreciate your time, Kelly Carlin. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Micah. Thanks for having me.